Welcome to I May Be Wrong,
I don't know what this world is coming to.
but I don't think so. We're broadcasting from the greater Nashville area, the home of country music, beyond the borders of political correctness and identity politics. Facts and faith are our demarcations. Truth lights our path.
Here's the Barry White of Podcast Radio,
The Venerable Alfonso Ashworth.
OG, come on, stay with me, OG, stay with me, OG, stay with me, OG, come on, OG, come on, OG, come on, OG, stay with me, come on, OG, come on, OG, come on, OG, stay with me, come on, OG, come on, OG, come on, OG, come on, OG, damn, man, over some TVs, cuz, over some TVs, man, for real, that's somebody's granddaddy, cuz. What y'all trying to do? Talking about y'all kill this man over some TVs, cuz. Over some TVs, cuz. You hear me? That's we can get, cuz. Over some TVs, cuz. Stop playing, man. OG, come on, OG. Come on, OG. Come on, this somebody granddaddy, cuz. Over some TVs. Call them, cuz. Over some TVs, cuz. Come on, cuz. Come on, man. We better than this.
A failed attempt at humor last week when checking in with the small business that helps with our boat and dock up north. Knowing it wouldn't make a difference, he jokingly asked if being married to me might move him up in the queue. Obviously, with the motorized boating prohibition in our early days of COVID-19, he thought it might get a laugh. It didn't. And to be honest, I wasn't laughing either when it was relayed to me, because I knew how it would be perceived. He regrets it. I wish it wouldn't have happened. And that's really all.
Right now, there is a protest happening outside the governor's mansion in Lansing. Protesters are calling for the governor to lift her stay-at-home order. The protest is organized by Brandon Hall, a Grand Haven political activist. Our sister station in Lansing talked to him just moments ago.
Open Michigan now. We cannot go on like this. It's not acceptable. If you saw last week, there's businesses hurting. Families are about to go bankrupt. Michigan is. I've never seen Michigan like this. She's destroying our state, and we can't tolerate it.
What about people who are dying now?
Well, people die every day. Car accidents, hundreds of thousands every year. Should we ban cars? Are we no longer going to drive? I mean, it's ridiculous. And if you want to stay in your house on house arrest, stay there. Stay in your house. Stay there.
The protest continues until 2 this afternoon.
Well, what's going on in our society? What is happening in our communities that are not being policed? The violence, the death, the destruction, the communities that are falling apart. Just recently, a citizen was beaten because he tried to defend himself during a break-in of his business. The insanity that's going on with the communities that are breaking down, the communities now that are like in Seattle, where they have lost total control of the city. They have taken over the city hall. They're demanding that the mayor leave City Hall. Someone in City Hall, one of the council members, allowed a mob to come in and take over City Hall in Seattle. What's going on? The violence, the unyielding violence against unarmed, unprotected citizens. In New York City and in Chicago, 50 people are killed on average every other week in Chicago. Where's the outcry? Where's the outcry for children that are being murdered playing in their front yards? Yes, what happened to Mr. Floyd was awful, and I will not condone what happened. But that's not all Americans. That's not all of our police departments. 99.9% of police officers go and do their job every day and go home at night, and some of them never make it home. 89 police officers were gunned down in this country last year, and many more to come, because every week we hear of a new case. I tell you what, I'm on my soapbox, but I've got someone on that I think can answer a few questions. If you have questions, of course, you can go into the chat room, me on Facebook Live, or you can join us at my Facebook chat room on the website called The Furnace. You can ask questions and make comments there. I see that people are already chiming in. They're saying, "Come quickly, Lord Jesus." Ruby Ruffin said, "Glad I remembered the show today. My God." Carletta Mitchell III says, "Way to keep the show on, Brother Al. And evil will never justify evil." That is the truth. You cannot conquer evil with evil. You just can't do it. But I got someone, John Harris is someone I have grown to admire. I've met him at some events. I've been able to talk to him a few times on my show. He's very knowledgeable of the subject when it comes to the Second Amendment. He is of course, he's a part of the Tennessee Firearms Association. He's also a local attorney who deals in these matters. And of course, I want to welcome him to, I may be wrong, but I don't think so. John, welcome to the show, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
What is happening? We don't have a whole lot of time, but I'm going to give you all the time that I feel like is necessary. Specifically in the state of Tennessee, quickly, the question has come up about being able to carry your firearms openly without the need of a permit. Is that something that's happening in our state? Is that something that's being worked on?
That is not something that currently is allowed in Tennessee without a permit. If you have what's called the enhanced permit, at this point, you can carry openly or concealed. We also have a concealed only permit, and then there are some bills pending, 3 bills, 2 of which would allow open permitless carry under certain circumstances and for certain classes of citizens. And in fact, there's an amendment proposed on one of them that would exclude the application of the bill from Tennessee's 4 major cities.
So as far as Tennessee is concerned, we do have a very conservative approach to our gun laws at the moment. And it's individuals like you. Go ahead.
No. I think you're on a good point. In fact, Tennessee, in the context of what constitutes a conservative approach, is far behind the majority of other states on this issue.
Well, we know what's happening in other states at the moment. And of course, I played a video clip of retired Officer Dorns, who was gunned down, a 77-year-old retired officer, just protecting his friend's business. I have other videos to play, and I'm just really hesitant to keep this going with the videos because it's not seemed to be affecting most people. So I felt like we take more time talking one-on-one. The push to defund. Now they're changing the word now. They're saying defund does not mean totally defund. It means sort of shifting the resources from one area to another, instead of shifting funds to our police departments who are desperately needing more help. They're going to put that in the hand of social workers, college professors or whoever the think tanks are. Removal. Some are calling for the dismantling or the removal of our police department. What, in your mind and in your expertise in your field of knowledge, what would that do to the black community specifically and to America as a whole?
I think it would be devastating, and history teaches us that. When you look back a century ago to what became communist Russia, those were some of the steps that led to communism, was getting rid of proper law enforcement and enforcement mechanisms.
And putting other people in charge.
From studying sociology and criminal deviant behavior is if you want a good deterrent effect on violent crime and violent criminals, you have to have a high certainty not only of police intervention, but prosecution and effective convictions as well. And when you start talking about reducing the active police force, the guys that are on the street that have the ability to interview, intervene, and make arrests, what you do is you put the citizenry at risk, and statistics tell us that a lot of the violent crime that's the problem occurs in public housing and in certain parts of cities that I think can disproportionately impact lower economic segments of our population.
You know, it just doesn't make any common sense to say there's more crime, but we need less enforcement.
Oh, it makes no sense at all. It is, I mean, I understand what, like, as you said, what they're really trying to do is mislead the public by blaming the cops, because what they ultimately want to do is take money from law enforcement that is used to intervene and stop riots and looting and violence and shift it over to social welfare programs.
Yes.
Which, many of which, you know, if you look back through history, follow the communist plan of taking public resources and redistributing those resources through the government to population segments.
Exactly.
Generate the resources.
Exactly. And that leads me to this. Of course, there are people responding in my chat, and they're talking about, of course, weeding out the bad. Don't put them all in the same boat. Talking, of course, about our police officers. And of course, AT, one of my regulars in the chat, says this is the democratic way of doing things. Use another ethical subject as position to make you choose. So mental health should not be made an competition to law enforcement. Both services are necessary. So he's right, and what you're saying is right. Along with that, is they're taking a situation that's gotten out of hand, quite frankly, that's gotten out of hand over many years, and they're taking that situation and using it as a wedge. They're using it to create a wedge between Americans. What they're not realizing, there are outside forces at hand here. The Chinese, the Russians, and God knows a number of other nefarious organizations that would love to see this country crumble beneath our feet. And they have almost achieved that. If you sort of look at the broader picture, is that we had chaos on our streets for several nights. Mayors refused to act. Governors refused to act. What can the American people do but pick up arms? Whether this a sword, a stick, or whatever we have to use. What is my rights, John, if I feel threatened? If I'm guarding my business? I had somebody ask me this. Matter of fact, we was talking about guarding our businesses in our community, and I had a citizen tell me that we're not allowed to do that. They said, you can't do that. Tell me, John, what can I do?
It is a horrible situation presently in Tennessee. Even though we've had a Republican supermajority in charge of the governor's office and the legislature for 11 years now, it is a horrible situation because the statutes that define use of force in the civilian context do not reflect the common understanding that most citizens have. And so, for example, when I do this in a fuller discussion, I address the fact that under our statutes, and you start with Tennessee Code Annotated 3911-611, you can only use deadly force, which includes brandishing a weapon. I mean, you use deadly force long before you pull the trigger. But brandishing a weapon or possessing a baseball bat and threatening to use it, you can only do that under current Tennessee statutes if there's imminent fear of death or serious bodily injury to a human, either yourself or someone that you have the statutory right to defend. Under our statutes, you cannot, under any circumstances, use deadly force or lethal force. You can't brandish a firearm, for example, if someone is looting your business, because if they're just trespassing or if they're just stealing merchandise, those are property thefts and those are property crimes, and no human life is implicated at that point. So unless the looter or the rioter turns from stealing or damaging property and starts a physical attack on an individual, a citizen can't use deadly force to stop it. You almost got to stand by and watch them loot and pillage your building, unless it turns into a violent attack initiated by the looter or the rioter on the individual. And in fact, if you were a business owner like downtown Nashville and your business was being looted and you pulled your weapon and never discharged it, just held it out, brandished it, and screamed at them, "Stop or I'll shoot," that's a felony in Tennessee, because you've used deadly force to protect property, which you can't do, and you've used deadly force in an attempt to effect a citizen's arrest, which you can't do. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that could easily find themselves, when they think they're just defending their own property, being the individual that's getting arrested. And I've defended pawn shop owners here in Nashville in that very circumstance in the past, who've tried to stop property thefts in their pawn shops by brandishing a weapon, and they're the ones that got arrested for it, and the thief frequently runs off with the goods.
I hope my listeners are hearing this, because my understanding of what you just said is, if I'm standing in front of my business trying to prevent someone from stealing or robbing or looting or burning, they could literally just walk by me, never threaten me, never put hands on me, and they could just walk by me and there's not a thing I could really do. Is that pretty much it?
True. The statute says that you can use force, reasonable levels of force, to stop a property crime. So you could push them back, for example, or you could yell at them.
So,
but you can't resort to deadly force, which means brandishing a weapon, discharging a weapon, waving a bat at them, waving a club at them, snapping one of those batons like law enforcement carries. All of that stuff would get you arrested on felony charges.
So if law enforcement is no longer my option, then basically I have no other option but just to allow someone to ruin my business, ruin my future, ruin my way of life, and basically do nothing. That's what I'm hearing.
If you're a business owner, I mean, I don't think this is going to happen in your home, although it could. But if you're a business owner, like some of the ones on downtown Broadway, they've almost are forced into the situation, particularly like happened in Nashville 2 weekends ago, where there was, it's been reported, no police presence on Broadway when the looting was going on. Someone suggested that was because the mayor said, stay off of Broadway, don't intervene. But those property owners, those business owners, if police aren't going to give a presence, and they can use force when civilians can't, then the property owners have one choice, and that's stand there in enough numbers to resist the, as you said, the walk-bys, or have enough security guards hired at their own expense to present that human shield from having the rioters and the looters access their property.
You know, I'm not condoning anything here. I'm just trying to get information, and I'm glad that you've come on. So I'm not going to encourage people to take the law in their own hands. Now, of course, I've had people say, well, things are not as important as a person's life. So allow them to loot, allow them to burn, and allow them to just create chaos. What concerns me more so than maybe what you just said about protecting my property, as far as my rights to protect my property, are very limited in scope, very narrow in scope. Yes, I could try to wrestle someone to the ground. I can try to, discourage them. I could plead with them. I can beg them. I can do a whole lot of things except brandish a weapon and use force to a degree that it could create bodily harm or death. So that now that we got that understood, why are good law-abiding citizens standing on the sideline while legislators and governors and the House and our representatives are trying to figure a way to give us less enforcement?
That's a difficult question. And part of it, frankly, is legislators who prioritize the time and the issues that they can deal with. We see that every year where bills are filed and legislators tend to put a focus on certain categories of bills, whatever's a hot topic. And there's always firearms related, handgun carry, gun law bills, and these self-defense bills pending in the mix. We're tracking about 50 of them in this session alone. But the news media puts a bad spin on them, unfortunately, because they don't understand the fundamental rights that citizens should have and how statutes already infringe those. We have legislators that are part of the problem because they don't truly value the constitutional republic and the standards that it creates, and instead they operate on the theory that with respect to the public and with respect to the citizens, law enforcement and government ought to be the entity that takes care of the nanny state, and therefore that's why you see so many laws that say, well, even if we're going to let you carry a gun, you can't carry it into the into parks, you can't carry it into public buildings, you can't carry it into a lot of places. Yeah,
they pretty much take the firearm away from the law-abiding citizen. Let me ask you this, John, because I don't want to run out of time. And a lot of people are responding in the chat room. This is a great show. It says, I'll be judged by 12, not carried by 6, says Bill Davenport. There's a lot of comments about this on here. And I know your expertise may not go beyond the scope of what we're talking about on this matter. Can you debunk, or would you be willing to debunk some of the myths about police officers shooting black males? What are the facts that you know?
I don't have the facts specifically, but I mean, the facts are verifiable. There are statistics kept by the federal government, and they're basically compiling statistics that's fed to them by organizations like TBI. So if you have a citizen-involved shooting or an officer-involved shooting, every aspect of that event, the age of the victim, the officers involved, the race, the national origin, the sex, all of the details about the shootings are compiled and available. They may be 2 or 3 years in arrears because of the process of getting it reported, But all of that data is there. And I have seen, but I've not independently verified, some statistics that say, law enforcement actually uses force or deadly force more against non-black targets.
Yes.
Hispanics, whites, Asians, whatever.
Right.
Than they do against the black population.
Correct. That is correct.
And so the data's out there. And what the fact is, the news media either is complicit in misreporting it, or when someone gets on the mic and says something that's flatly, clearly false, they don't challenge them.
Right. They don't fight the narrative. They never challenge the narrative that police officers, especially white police officers, are literally hunting down black males and killing them. And the facts are, it's not factual. It's not true. But John, of course, I want to thank you for coming on this morning. And a lot of the people in my chat room are taking a lot of what you said, and it's a lot of chatter now about what they can do to protect themselves and what they can do legally and lawfully in the state of Tennessee to keep themselves and their families safe. Of course, I'm not happy about some of the information that you shared with me this morning because my friend that told me that I could not do that, I have to admit they were right.
Well, don't shoot the messenger.
Well, I'm not going to shoot the messenger, I promise. But I really appreciate you coming on this morning, and I thank you very much for what you're doing for the state of Tennessee. And I want to tell you, God bless you.
It's not just me. It's, I need you and your listeners to understand more clearly what these problems are, where the source of the problem comes from, and that we have opportunities through grassroots activities like the Tennessee Firearms Association.
Yes.
And you've been to some of our meetings.
Yes.
To raise the money and elect the right kind of legislators to fix these problems.
That's it.
If we don't change that composition of legislative office holders, it's not going to get any better.
No, it's got to be done at the grassroots. And you're right down there with it, my friend, on the front line. I want to thank you. I want to tell you, God bless you. And God bless everything that you're doing. And thanks for coming on to I May Be Wrong, but I don't think so.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Of course, that's my friend, John. Of course, he is someone that I've grown to admire. And I really appreciate him coming on. And before we leave, before we get off the air, I played this really quick video that I wanted to play earlier that's happening as we speak. And this is insane. It's insane what's going on in these communities.
On the 12th consecutive night of protests in Seattle, hundreds of people stormed City Hall and demanded the resignation of Mayor Jenny Durkan. The protesters were reportedly allowed access to the building by a Seattle City Council member. Authorities in Seattle have been sharply criticised for their handling of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. As in many other US cities, some people are now calling for the city police department to be defunded.
Well, there you have it. You have it. No police. No police, no law enforcement. The city officials are open the gate to the barbarians. Of course, this is where we are, folks. Lawlessness, chaos. If you're not protecting yourself, as you just heard my friend John Harris tell you, there are limitations on what you can do in front of your business. If you brandish a weapon, or if you try to create force to protect your property, you could go to jail and still be broke and in debt. Of course, this is another show. And hey, I want to thank everyone in the chat room. There's a lot of chatter in there. And of course, we want you to continue to do this. I want y'all to continue to come back to the show, of course, and I want y'all to always be a part of the program. We have a lot to do in this country. We have a lot to take care of. And I want to tell everyone out there, God is still on the throne. God bless you. God bless America. And God bless our children. Peace.
You've been listening to Alfonso Ashworth, the Barry White of Podcast Radio. Go forth and share his message. I may be wrong, but I don't think so. Remember, no two people can ever occupy the same place at the same time. You were uniquely and wonderfully made. Born an original. Don't buy a copy. God bless. Peace.